Hey guys, Benjamin here. As you probably know, I am the co-founder of Despicable Company, and I am here with another member of Despicable Company who you may not have met, Jordan. Everyone say hello to Jordan.
Hello, everybody.
Normally, John, the other co-founder of Despicable Company, is on this show, but he's not here today, and I'm going to let Jordan explain why.
I mean, it's really not a crazy story. Usually these guys are recording the podcast downstairs, and I've always wanted to be on the podcast. And so I was like, hey, John, would it be cool if I co-hosted the podcast? And he said no. And so he's not here anymore.
And I'm still trying to figure out what that means. But in the meantime, we've got a show to do, so buckle up and get ready for another episode of the Despicable Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Despicable Podcast. I'm Benjamin, of course.
And I'm Jordan.
And in all seriousness, John is fine. He's just not here on the night that we needed to get the intro done. So we've got Jordan filling in and everything's good.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I was pretty clear with my story. I mean, he's just not here.
Right. And you definitely didn't imply that anything bad had happened to John.
Not at all.
Yep, we're just moving on. All good. Yep. As you know, we've been working through John's album, I'll Be Fine, song by song every week. So we've got one major song left, but that's going to be next week. We'll do In Stride, the last song of the album, the last song to get written, all that fun stuff. But before that, we thought we'd kind of take a fun detour this week.
Yeah, this week we are going to be covering all three of the interludes. And what's cool about that is, like, for those of you that don't know, the interludes are just kind of like, half songs that go in between that kind of set up for the next one. And since those aren't full songs, we didn't feel like it was going to be necessary to cover each one of those individually, so we're just doing all three of them in this one.
So get ready for 3 shorter, in-depth conversations about each one of those songs, and we'll talk about the themes that kind of connect the whole album together as one story.
Yo, that's super, super exciting. But let's get this going before John gets home, because I really want to do the outro too.
That's fair enough. Take it away, Mr. Despicable.
In just 45 minutes, the songs of I'll Be Fine tell a story that takes place over the course of a year and a half. To tie these songs together, John crafted a series of interludes that span the album. In addition to fleshing out the narrative, these brief compositions introduce many of the musical motifs and themes found throughout the record.
So when I first decided that this was going to be an album, I really thought it made the most sense to make it a concept album and tell a story from front to back. And there were a lot of records that I've listened to over the years that have been concept albums. So that's been really inspiring. One we've talked about a lot being Forget Not Slow Down by Reliant K. But there are just a lot of tracks on concept albums that are like interludes, little shorter kind of plot devices to kind of develop some of the characters and just tell the story a little bit deeper. And so when we first started making the album, I thought that it would be important to include some stuff like that to just kind of help move things along.
Yeah, I remember by the time that we were talking about it being an album rather than like an EP or something shorter, things had been happening kind of chronologically, and it made sense to tell a story. But you definitely were like working within a structure within each song. Like these songs are mostly pop songs.
Yeah.
Not in the sense that they sound like pop, but they're all verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, chorus. And if you're going to get the details of that to work and also try to tell a story with a bunch of them, there's a lot of spots that it's just a lot easier to write a verse or a part of a song or a musical interlude to pass time or tell part of the plot without you having to worry about, oh, I need a whole new song to go between song 7 and song 8.
Right. That was actually honestly where a lot of the early things for these interludes came from, is they were started as shorter sections that I thought were maybe going to become full songs, but I ended up being set aside. But I'm glad that things came out the way that they did.
I remember with Forget Not Slow Down specifically, the last song is kind of split into 2, and it's not really an interlude, but they made the second song a parenthesis title. So the full last song is called This Is the End If You Want It, but it's written as This Is the End, and then the next song in parentheses is If You Want It. And I remember feeling like that was a strong way to kind of like discern the interludes from the real songs, so to speak. Sometimes you'll see them write out a song title and then in parentheses the word interlude, but that kind of looks kind of hokey. And
I agree.
I think when we arrived at these particular interludes, they had clear titles, and so it made sense to just kind of put those titles with that parenthesis marker.
Right. And then the interesting thing about the titles specifically is that together, I mean, excluding the intro track, which is April 3rd, but the three true interludes, their titles strung together are a sentence. I'm sorry, darling, it's done. Which is not really like a hidden message or anything, but it does kind of, give some foreshadowing. It's kind of a tease of the overall theme of where the story goes.
Sure. The cool thing about the interludes on this particular record is they are to some degree tied together musically by kind of the motif that we refer to as her theme, which is da 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 da,
which is all over the record.
Right.
But
it opens the very first,
the
April 3rd intro track, and then it's basically the melody within some part of each of these interludes.
Right.
In a couple of them, it's the vocal. In a couple of them, it's the guitar.
Mm-hmm. The lead vocal, like the main melody of both I'm Sorry and It's Done, are actually where that theme came from originally.
Right.
And then we started throwing it all over the album.
And then the other musical motif that's kind of tying a couple of those together, based around an acoustic picking pattern.
Yes. Interesting factoid behind that. I wrote that one of the first times that I ever went to her apartment. She had a guitar leaned up against her couch, and while she was going to the bathroom or something, I was just noodling, and I came up with that picking part, and it like I always said I was going to write something to it, and it was kind of weird. Like it became like sort of a thing like within our relationship where like she knew about it and she thought it was really pretty, and like I at one point like sent like a voice memo recording of it to her and just like thinking of you, and so it sort of became something that was very close to the heart of our relationship, and it was very interesting, at least for me, to include it in the way that it is. It's used in both I'm Sorry and It's Done, and in one it's kind of used sort of to represent that moment, but in the other one it's used kind of as a reflection and like a memory of when things were good.
And then the other kind of sonic signature of all three of those interludes is the voices, which kind of creep up as like reference to not being able to communicate within the relationship.
Yeah.
They're very like one-sided messages, and they're not interacting with the lead vocal, and a lot of times washed out with echo and, you know, other effects to make it kind of feel floaty and more distant than intimate.
Yeah, and that's in stark contrast to my vocals in each of those songs. That both of those are really, all three of them really are kind of the most intimate, direct messages to her on the record. Like all the songs kind of reference the relationship and where things are going and how I'm feeling, but those three specifically are like talking to her in the story.
And they're all very like soft and somber and, you know, whispery.
Yeah. So it definitely is meant to be a juxtaposition of the intimacy and the distance.
So jumping into the first of the three interludes, I'm Sorry, which you're coming out of the 1-2 punch of Everything I Need and For Now, which set up the genesis of the relationship and kind of the early crossing of boundaries and kind of falling in love too quickly. And this kind of bridges between that and Worth It.
So Worth It was one of the first ones written for the project, and it honestly is like probably the happiest sounding one just in the story in general. But if you really look at the lyrics, there's a lot there. It's like there's a lot of opposition to the optimism presented in the song. And I didn't think that necessarily was the main thing that people got from it when listening to it. And I thought it kind of helped the context of it to set it up with this short blurb about how things were kind of going in a different direction than I thought they were at the beginning, and how things were just getting more difficult than I had anticipated. Just the overall like feelings of distance that were coming up fairly early that I was trying to ignore.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the way that it shook out, those first two songs before it are very energetic, and you're kind of distracted by kind of the saccharine nature of sweet melodies. There's some chaos at the end of For Now, and then we kind of settle into this lull. And this is the first time that you get kind of emotionally raw, where it comes down. You have that theme that represents the good of that relationship and being in her apartment and all this stuff. But also you're covering an interesting kind of like time gap, because the first two songs are kind of in real time and almost back to back in terms of time period. And then Worth It, how much time is kind of being covered between those two by that interlude?
Those first two songs happen kind of at the end of my junior year of college. And I'm Sorry interlude kind of spans the summer that I went home to be with my family in Florida and just work and save up money. Actually, I mean, to buy a ring. Then Worth It kind of takes place like coming back at the beginning of my senior year of college. So we were long distance actually for the period that I'm Sorry is about, because she was living in Indiana at the time and I was down in Florida with my family. So that's kind of a lot of the initial struggle that came up, and honestly is some foreshadowing for later parts of the story when distance comes up again, like in the South. That's a different long distance experience, but some of the themes are present pretty early on.
As far as developing this one musically, I don't think I really got involved at all until the demo was done, and this is a pre-production demo that didn't change. It was just that, and then we tracked it.
Right. Yeah. This was one I did over the summer after CMC. So this was after most of the other ones were written. This was obviously to fill the slot between For Now and Worth It. But not much really changed up until later. So let's just listen to it.
Those blissful days, the way you'd smile and kiss my face, say you love me, do you love me? I'm sorry things have been so hard, I hate to be so far apart, I know I shouldn't play this card, but I miss you. Do you miss me? 'Cause baby you're distant and I'm worried.
And then kind of that pad holding that sets up the key for Worth It.
Yeah, because it's the same first chord.
Which was an important reason for doing them musically that way.
And not a lot else changed with that demo. I mean, it was pretty much just two mixes and then we were done.
Yeah, you did that entirely yourself, as I recall. Did I even mix it? I don't even know if I did.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I just put it together and sent it to you and you were like, yep, there you go.
And then I think we recorded it pretty similar to how it was there. But when we were working with Jay Hall, who helped us with just kind of some general engineering advising / mix advice, this was one that he had some particular suggestions on changing the arrangement a little bit.
Yeah. Once we executed the changes that he had, it kind of became like definitely the emotional highlight of this particular interlude. Like the moment with the "Do you miss me?" like whole concept, like that really represents the distance probably better than any of the lyrics do. And
yeah, I remember we were playing him back, I think most of the record at a state where we had recorded the lead vocals. All the instruments were there. It wasn't mixed much at all. And he was just kind of taking it all in, got to the end of this song and paused it and was like, that needs to be a moment. And
we were like, what? It is a moment.
Right. We were like, it's so like, introspective and intimate and stuff. He's like, no, but like I miss you, pause. Do you miss me? Longer pause. Like, milk that. If you listen to some of Jay's work on, he produces for a band, Hidden Hospitals. They do this in a couple different places on their records where they will extend parts of the music an awkward amount of time to get you to focus on them or to create some sort of impact moment. Like,
Yeah.
Jay's all about sonically adding drama to kind of enhance the story or enhance the feeling or whatever. And we had recorded it straight through like normal. So in kind of the process between recording it and mixing it, I went in and like did all of this glitchy editing, because we kind of went for the approach of, instead of re-recording you singing those words really long, I'll just cut the word up and loop like within the word.
Which I thought was super cool the first time I heard it, because when he first told us like, oh, you need to change this moment and make it big and make it longer, we were like, I don't want to retrack anything. I like the tracks that we got, and then like you taking what we had and just like lengthening it and making it like super glitchy and cool. I was a big fan of.
Yeah, and once we started kind of doing that with your voice, I had the idea of kind of doing what Jay does with Hidden Hospitals a lot, of like I chopped the bass and like there's a like it's like reverse bass notes.
Yeah.
And like just creates this like almost, I don't know, it adds to the feeling of separation, but almost in this glitchy way, which, not that a theme on the record is like being separated and like glitchy phone calls and things like that, but like something about that imagery for some reason fit.
It definitely became a very expressive musical moment, which I am very, very proud of, very pleased with.
The volume of every layer is like all over the place. That's probably the most active from a nerdy mix perspective. Like a lot of the songs, stuff stays at a certain level for, 15 to 20 seconds at any given part in the song. And this one, like the volume is going up and down and panning is going from the left side to the right side on almost everything that whole time.
You were saying that it's like the most handmade part, like from an editing perspective. Like everything else on the record, you feel like you can kind of hear, like, especially if you know about audio stuff, like you can kind of hear how it was done. And that one is like there's a lot of attention done to the edit itself that like would take some intense work to replicate.
So I guess let's go ahead and listen to the final product.
I could not believe them.
That's that same pad from the original demo. I don't think we changed it at all.
Yeah.
There's definitely some more keyboards that are kind of added to beef up the guitar.
Right. I remember adding the kind of bird noises to like all the
you can hear
electrical
right now, the
blips.
squeakiness. A lot tighter of a performance on that high octave.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, the squeaks are really prominent if you're listening for them. The little birdie noises.
Yeah, it just kind of makes that top end really exciting.
I forgot about that. The other thing was we decided after that moment kind of settles to wait even longer, which that was another Jay thing.
Yep.
I remember we gave Jay a version where it went right back in. And he was like, no. After you pause the 2 times, wait like 5 whole seconds, like 5 real human seconds. I think that's how he said it. And so there's a very long pause. And I had the idea of trying to make that last section. We cut all the layers, just did your lead vocal and the acoustic.
Yep.
And
made it like kind of sound like it was done in a stairwell or something.
But then we did that and it didn't quite work. And so we ended up, I was going to do like an analog thing where it sounded like it was on tape, and that didn't work either. And what we ended up doing was I used a plugin that makes it sound like a bad MP3, which to my ear just comes across like a voice memo from like a few years ago. Like
Which is kind of the vibe that we were going for.
Right. Voice memos on your iPhone now are a lot better and would never sound that bad.
That's true.
But
at the time,
it is like a 2013, 2014 sounding voicemail.
After everything's cut out, we did bring back in some of the pads at the very end to just kind of like reestablish that last chord and like transition really smoothly into Worth It.
Not a lot of people know this, and we haven't really addressed this. If you've jumped around the album much on like streaming, like you can hear the decay of that pad in the beginning of Worth It. And even when we put it out initially as a single, we did that because that was the only way that we could put it out and have all the stream counts be the same and still have it, when you listen to the album, be perfectly seamless and the songs to go right into each other without any sort of pause or silence. So then Darling, which is honestly like much later on the record, it's really kind of the halfway point.
It's technically the second song of the B-side. So the same week that I wrote Ready to Go, I actually wrote this one first.
Were you thinking it was going to be like a chorus, or?
I just kind of was writing from a very sad place, and it sounded to me sort of like a chorus, but it was darker than I was intending to, I guess, even really admit to myself at the time. At least too dramatic to then later send to her.
Right.
Which Ready to Go I did end up sending to her. But that's another story. Check out that episode. But yeah, so Darling kind of started as this weird half song that then after CMC that you came down to Florida and were helping me kind of flesh out a few other songs. You actually helped me finish the stanza that was Darling. And we kind of had the full like idea of what the song was going to be.
Yeah.
Just really loosely.
How did you arrive at like placing it where you did? Because the initial crux of the idea sounds like it came around Ready to Go, but we end up putting it kind of 2 slots later after Smoke.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. So, I mean, Smoke actually came technically from a writing standpoint before Ready to Go.
That's true.
But just from a thematic standpoint, it felt better to kind of start the whole, maybe things aren't going so great with Smoke, and then kind of the idea of like, this is actually over, and I'm realizing that it's maybe time to give up is with Darling.
I remember the initial demo that you did kind of during that summer.
Yeah, so this was a pretty stark departure from the rest of the album from a genre perspective.
Yeah, let's give that a little listen, shall we?
Don't you know you're killing me, darling, darling, darling. Everything you do, I've thought about it. There's never been a time when
Cue me in my parents' basement, very, very confused.
this way to you. And after all these loves, you got it on your shots. Hope you can see this side of all the things we're not.
Here comes the left turn.
It's like cue you being very, very confused.
And I hope I recognize you.
Are those wind chimes?
No, it was a pad that I had that just had those jingles in it.
Ah,
Yeah.
I hope I recognize you.
I'm hearing the main in that.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, for sure. Yeah. That little synth bass moment was one of my favorites.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. And then kind of this drum loop continuing to go. It's just like,
Please tell me what's going on.
I don't love you anymore.
Yeah, this is
I don't-
totally
I don't love you
it's a
anymore.
reference to your anniversary.
I think it's
Or
just
no,
called Anniversary.
yeah, just anniversary. Excuse me. On Band of Kansas's Alligator.
Which is an underrated, underknown record. So definitely check out.
Absolutely.
So Jay Hall, who we referenced earlier, having helped us with I'm Sorry and various production ideas across the entire album, produced Alligator, which is kind of a breakup-ish record by a band in Kansas. And there's a song called Anniversary that ends very similar to that, with a drum loop that goes longer than the rest of the music and has like a little voiceover. It's like, I don't love you anymore. I don't love you anymore.
Yeah. So trying to do something similar. Anyways, so that was clearly not what we ended up going with.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. So as you referenced, I had heard the idea of Darling as a song in Florida.
Right.
You pitched it to me with a couple lines missing at the end. We fleshed that out. And I loved it. It's very on its head, a very like simple little, almost to my ear, Beatles-esque just verse with very simple phrasing and like at the time a very pretty just little strummy chord thing.
Yeah.
And you played it on acoustic that whole time that we were together.
Yep.
And then
I remember after I sent it to you, you were like, "No, send me a demo of what you did before."
yeah, like I was, well, because at that point there was no voice memo of the original version. And
Right.
so I was like, just send me that. Like, I need to remember what that was. Because
Yeah.
I remember that was like, I was sold on that. And
Yeah.
this, I don't know what the heck you're on, man. And luckily you did. In my head, this is like the original version of Darling.
I think it was actually during this voice memo performance that I came up with the inclusion of the motif on this one. At the very end,
Where
there's
you
like a
hum
hum,
it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you know you're killing me, darling, with everything you do? Thought about it, there's never been a time where I've been this way to you. And after all is lost, you got in all his shots. I hope that you can take a bird's eye view, see through this facade of all the things we're not. And I hope I recognize you.
Yeah, so there wasn't really any concrete form on either side. And here's that little motif hum.
I don't remember. How did we arrive at where we went with the pre-production demo? I know that in my brain, and I don't know if I pitched this to you or whether I built a skeleton drum-wise and said, I don't remember exactly how it went down, but I wanted it to feel more like Baby, which is the song coming out of Savannah on Forget Not Slow Down by Reliant K, where it like the tempo drops a little bit. It kind of comes out of like a somber moment in the previous song and kind of, it feels more like an outro to the previous song than it does set a new groove or have a new drum loop or
Right.
have a new musical idea.
And I remember how we did this one, which was you were like, just track the guitars and then send it to me and I'll do like some production-y stuff over it. I'll make the drums happen and you added some like belly key stuff too. And then you sent it back to me and I did the vocals over it.
Okay. So I just had you play it on electric.
I kind of decided what the form was going to be a little bit on either end of the verse, and then you fleshed it out from there. And here's what that sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to start with the theme. I thought that was strong.
Don't you know you're killing me, darling, with everything you do? I've thought about it, there's never been a time where I've been this way to you. And after all is lost, you got in all your shots. I hope that you can.
I think I knew at the time that I didn't want the cymbals to continue. We ended up replacing all this with percussion later.
Right, yeah.
I hope I recognize you.
Yeah, so with this outro, from the voice memo where I started humming at the end, I kind of wanted to do like a full choir moment to to make that really shine.
I feel like I remember, did we at some point decide to record it as instead of to make it sound better or something?
Oh, no, I know what it was.
What was it?
So before it was kind of a big like with the
and there's a giant
right, yeah,
like
it's
H sound.
It's hard for the listeners at home without seeing, but like making the H sound with your mouth versus with your nose is a very different sound. Like there's versus So it was weird. It was kind of an with a sniff at the beginning.
Right. Because when you did it with your mouth, it was so loud.
Right.
And like the voice level would go from like to
right.
And it was very dramatic. And we were doing layers and layers of them because there's like at any given time like 8 different voices saying
So that stack got a little obnoxious.
Yeah.
So
I can't remember. Did
down.
we have the gang when we did gang vocals for the whole record? Did we do this part? I think we might have done a couple layers of.
I think we did a layer of just like the melody, but the main stack of like the chords that move, they're all just me.
Right. Other things that changed. There's a lot of the cool percussion.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
That's another Jay Hall contribution in terms of he was just like, yo, household objects as percussion is the move at all times.
Yeah.
And so I knew I wanted that part that earlier I said where I wanted the cymbals to cut out from the demo became sleigh bells, but we didn't have sleigh bells. But in getting all this weird percussion stuff ready that Jay told us to, we ended up with a lot of jangly things, such as bottle caps in jars and things like that. So that's actually what that sound is. It's layered and drenched in a bunch of echo and reverb.
Right. And the other thing, we've mentioned this a couple times across the production of the record, is the oats.
Yes. Probably the most prominent use of oats besides Ready to Go. And used to the same effect, where it's just playing the tom part, basically.
It is interesting, though. I think in this particular one, like whereas in Ready to Go, it does sound like it just kind of beefs up the toms and adds like a cool little layer. In this one, it sounds more like hand percussion. It sounds more like a bongo or conga or something.
That's true. I did play it a little bit like a bongo, and I think there's certain in Ready to Go, I matched the toms note for note.
Sure.
Whereas in this, I'm kind of following the toms, but I'll add like a that's not in the toms.
Yeah, no, I really liked it. This is probably my favorite use of oats on the record.
And I feel like we left them pretty loud too. So especially in headphones, I think they come out pretty strong.
Yeah, when you know that they're there, that's what you hear.
And there's a big fill in the initial. That's
right,
oats.
Yeah.
Very much oats solo.
Oats solo.
Maybe we'll just declare it as we listen.
Oats solo performed by Benjamin.
Yes. I mean, we added more of the belly stuff.
Yeah, I know a lot of that was used just pulled from what you did on that first demo.
Yeah, I think we may have added a couple more layers.
Oh, I know one exciting layer from this one was we added the harpsichord, doubling the guitar picking part. I forgot about that until just now.
I mean, that's an extension of a trick that we've mentioned previously on other more of the electric songs where we add like a really sharp synth lead, like a buzzy kind of weird sound doubling an electric guitar part.
Yeah.
Just playing the same notes just to make that guitar sound less earthy and more like
ethereal.
We kind of did that here with the cleaner guitar by just doubling it with a harpsichord.
Yeah.
It just gives it a weird like
kind of buzzy, but like not in a bad way. Just it makes it sound warmer. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I think the only other thing was the guitar for me was a little bit more intentional just from a note choice perspective.
Yeah. I definitely like how this one turned out sonically.
Yeah.
So let's give it a listen. That growth is literally the end of Smoke reversed, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Oat solo! That might have been louder than the oat solo. We also had you like sing the octave really strong.
Oh, that's
and then
right.
Added
Yeah,
a telephone effect to it.
All of the vocals in this are interesting layer-wise. Like there were whispers, there were shouts, but all of it kind of blended together into this kind of.
Some of that, honestly, sonically came from Air for Free. The more recent Reliant K album has a lot of that. where
Yeah.
there's just layered shouting that's just on the octave.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not an abundance of H in the hms, which is
Right.
the result of our hard work. There's the little bells.
I don't know what to think, and I'm thinking more. So please.
I was listening so hard for the harpsichord, and I think I just heard it on this one spot where the picking is like doom doom dum, in just like a weird gap. You can kind of hear the like buzzy register, the doom doom dum doom ba doom ba doom. Yeah,
That's funny.
Yeah,
there is like whisper tracks, and that's I don't know if we've touched on that in the past.
We may have referenced it because we use it in a couple spots on some of the other songs, but this is definitely the most like prominent use of them.
Yeah. Super cool trick to make just a vocal sound more intimate. Like
And
to
more
some
breathy.
degree you can sing more breathy, but like it's cool to just layer in whispers of just like basically singing the song as a whisper right on top.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you can make that more shimmery or more dull or whatever to get a different effect.
In headphones, it definitely gives it a little bit of an ASMR quality.
That's a really weird thing to say about your album, man. John Lewis ASMR.
Yes. We should just bounce out just the whispers.
You put them on our Gumroad.
Yeah.
With the chord charts and stuff, like a bonus.
An ASMR bonus.
pack.
But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all we got on Darling. So let's talk about It's Done.
So for It's Done, this is the one interlude on the album of the three major ones that is almost a full song.
Yeah,
At
it's
least
true.
in terms of length. We've talked in the past about how sometimes the interludes kind of serve to be like kind of half a song or
Right.
like just a verse to kind of connect themes. But this one is like that way in the sense that there's not a verse and a chorus.
Yeah, it is
and a
kind of through
structure.
composed in that way.
Yeah, it's just kind of straight through, but it is pretty long. It is almost the length of like a normal short song.
What is it? Just under 3 minutes or something?
Something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Most of the record, or I guess like the 5 songs that were written at school at CMC were all kind of written in real time, and then a lot of them were kind of filling in the holes. This was the only one that was written after CMC that was also kind of written in real time, because it was written like about a direct phone call that happened like shortly after moving home after school. It was just kind of a weird moment where things, you know, there was contact again after a long time of no contact, and for a minute it felt like everything was kind of back to normal in a weird way, but also it wasn't. And that's kind of what the song is about, even though there definitely were like moments that were really good and moments that seemed sustainable. Like long term, it wasn't something that I wanted to be a part of. And so, you know, when it's done, it's done.
It's interesting because it brushes up against this idea that I think people are aware of, which is that it's oftentimes hard to walk away even from an unhealthy relationship.
Yeah.
And the same things that keep people in unhealthy relationships sometimes hinder them from moving on post a relationship where you do decide to get out.
Right.
And this feels like, to me, kind of a time capsule of a definitive moment of that, where it's like things were good at one point, and I do miss things being good.
Yeah.
But you come to the conclusion in it that, you know, when it's done, it's done.
It's Done came before I'm Sorry. I'm Sorry. I knew I wanted something in that section, but this one I wrote first, and then had the idea to keep that musical idea because of the, you know, the origin of the guitar part and everything like that. To have that be a representation of the beginning of the relationship. So this one was actually the first of those two to be written.
And it kind of serves as a callback in a way musically, because
Right.
this is the first time that you return to that kind of finger-picking guitar moment that happens in I'm Sorry, which is track 4 on the record. And this is probably the most direct one-to-one. Like, it's finger-picked. It's the same riff.
So there are actually a few different musical inspirations. Deus Vale, they had an EP that was called, it was like the Buildings EP or something.
Okay.
And they had written like a full song on that EP that then later for their first full-length album, they split into the first track and the last track. And like the first half of it was the first track and the second half of it was the last track. And so it was like the same musical idea that kind of tied the beginning to the end. And I really liked that kind of concept. And I'll reference the other inspiration when we get to that part of the song that I'm talking about.
I remember one time earlier this year, we had you on your live stream try to string all 3 interludes back to back. And it weirdly worked because it was like the second of the 3 interludes, which is Darling, is a little bit different musically, but it felt like it was like an A-B-A thing where it was like you start with the theme, then you go to a variation, which is Darling, and then you come back to this, which is It's Done.
Which is kind of oddly classical in form.
Yes.
Maybe we'll put out a rendition of that someday. Who knows? But jumping back to when that phone call happened and I like originally wrote the song, I voice memoed it pretty much right away and sent it to you. And was like, yeah, I think this is what I want to do for like the interludes or something to that effect.
Called me late last night and your voice took me back in time to when I had made up my mind that I loved you.
Once the theme was decided, that melody changed to be a little bit more what the theme was.
We talked for how long, heaven knows.
Versus
da,
da, da, da, da.
Yeah.
Right. Very slight difference.
Right.
Sound for a long time, like it was my lifeline. And I should have let you leave your name and called you back some other day when I was feeling closer to a man who's not in love with you. Oh, swear to God I'd have spared you if I knew that we'd fall apart and take opposing views. Whoa, as hard as you try to claim I've lost my mind, I'm sticking to my guns. And it breaks my heart, but when it's done, it's done. When it's done, it's done. When it's done, it's done.
Yeah, I remember really liking that right away. I remember the first time hearing, and I should have let you leave your name and called you back another day when I was feeling closer to a man who's not in love with you. I was like, dang. How did you come up with that?
I was sad.
Yeah, but like I just mean from a not to diminish your emotions, but from a craft perspective, it's very like, man, symbolically it sits and the words just sing in just the right way. It's very, again, like kind of how I felt about Darling when you first pitched it. Like Beatles-esque in its simplicity and just like it accomplishes what it needs to without any weird games. It's just a very simple song.
Well, thank you. I think it's important also to mention just another. So a big piece of the inspiration for this one, clearly, obviously, was a phone call, but I was also talking to another friend of mine about. Like they were talking about like an ex that had reached out to them and were like, it was right before like she was about to get married and like her ex hit her up and was like, hey, you know, like before you get married, I've got a bunch of stuff I want to say to you. And she was like, I don't know, do I talk to him? And I was like, I don't think that's a great idea because I've had this personal revelation recently that like when it's done, it's done. And then I was like, oh man, I should really write that song.
Right. I remember you telling me that.
Yeah. That was another big piece of inspiration for this, which I feel like because it's kind of about a few things, maybe makes it a little bit more accessible. And it's not just like, I got a phone call and then I wrote a song.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of songs like that about the whole, like, you know, one more night, either from the perspective of like, you'll be back or like, oh, I always come back to you.
Right.
Like that's a universal theme in a lot of pop music.
That's true.
And
so this does kind of sit counter to that.
Yeah. You take the high road, which is not usually how those songs go. Those songs are usually like, and I can't stop myself.
Yeah.
And this one you're like, but like, nah.
Yeah.
This is the but like, nah of I'll be fine. This will be a test of that people have listened to this much of these podcasts. If you come up to us at a show and you're like, "Yo, It's Done" is the but like nah of I'll be fine.
Oh my gosh.
Are you gonna play But Like Nah tonight? This ended up taking kind of an interesting two halves. There's like the first half that is the song as it is.
Yeah.
And we added some stuff to make it grow. But then it like slows down and becomes this like instrumental kind of last hurrah to the theme.
Right.
The ba-da-da-da-da that represents her. We've called it her theme.
It's funny earlier that you referenced the track Baby by Reliant K in inspiration for Darling, because that particular track was inspiring for me for this section, like the big slow down moment that kind of gives like one last big hurrah to this big emotional thing. And so we have the huge swell of all the chords going with the theme playing really loud, and then all the voices come back. Every voice that's been heard thus far in the interludes is all layered over top of each other, just making a lot of noise. And then at the very end, there's like a major and a minor chord being like played at the same time. So there's like a lot of tension, a lot of dissonance.
And it's interesting, you got the melody that kind of hangs in the balance on a couple of the interludes, which is the ba-da-da-da, da-da-da-da.
Right.
And most of the contexts, not to get all music theory nerd, it is in kind of a major suite context.
Right.
And then when you shove it at the end there where there's kind of those clashing chords, it's almost a haunting effect.
Yeah.
When that last ba-da-da-da hangs over like that weird clashy chord.
Yeah.
And then we swell in the first kind of chord of In Stride.
Right.
And that really exists to set up the next song key-wise.
Yeah.
But also clashes even further with that and kind of, in my brain, is not the smoothest transition we pulled off, but represents kind of a like almost walking away from the explosion.
Yeah.
It's the walking away from a burning building in a sense. And I remember you talking about that moment being kind of like the last hurrah of the theme and the band playing and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of resetting for the epilogue in a way.
Right.
This really feels like the conclusion to the story to me.
Yeah, that's true. And then the next song is kind of what comes next? While we're talking about the transitions, the transition into It's Done from Spent is like my favorite part of the whole record, because Spent is coming from this place of just like super deep darkness, and like there's if you want to hear more about that, listen to the Spent episode. But like the very last chord is like this big minor chord, and it holds on that note. And that note is, to get nerdy in music theory, like the pivot tone. It's the root of this first key. And to come in on that major chord definitely takes the mood immediately from this like really somber place to like, oh, suddenly things are happy again. I think it conveys pretty well the whole like emotion of like, oh, I got that call. Like things feel good for a second.
Kind of the false sense of security coming back from getting that contact, kind of like what we were just talking about of like, oh, but like things were good.
So, I mean, all of those ideas actually, I think, came together in the demo for that song. I don't think there was really much that changed. So let's listen to that demo.
Fun fact, there's like the ringing note is just like a cello type thing here.
Yeah.
But in the final, because we had Shane, our buddy, who plays a little bit of like echoey guitar on Spent, he's ringing out that same note, but up high. So we just had him keep going.
Yeah.
So he ended up recording all the way through this.
You called me late last night, and your voice took me back in time to when I had made up my mind that I loved you, but I miss you. We talked for how long, heaven knows, and when you did put down your phone, I listened to the dial tone for a long time.
I remember us trying to recreate that time, like trailed voice thing and the final, and we couldn't get it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, I feel like a lot of these things tonally, like I just wasn't as good of a singer when we did the demos as when we went to track.
I know we're talking over it, but like I just feel like this performance sounded more cryy
Sure.
in like an authentic, cool way that we didn't quite capture
That's fair.
in the pursuit of trying to make it sound nicer to listen to.
I'm sticking to my guns, and it breaks my heart, but when it's done, it's done. When it's done, it's done. When it's done, it's done.
You know what's interesting is that doom doom ka. That was, I don't know if you knew this, I was intentionally trying to reference Spent
Oh.
because Spent comes right before it, and that's the big like bridge motif is doom doom ka.
Right. Huh. I actually didn't know that. That's cool.
Did you just think it was like an interesting thing to do for fun?
Oh, I mean, I just thought it felt good. Like, I was just like, yeah, that's the part that the song needed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely was supposed to be an internal reference to Spent.
Huh.
And then that pad coming out of that we ended up using.
Yeah, that's the
It's
same pad.
one we used in the final.
Yeah.
Some of those we just got kind of attached to how they sounded, which is funny now listening back to these versions because they're so much worse than the versions.
Yeah. For a lot of these demos, a lot of them were, very, very rough. And that one in particular, not to say that it wasn't, but like all of the parts were there. And
Yeah.
really nothing else changed from an arrangement perspective, like at all. It was pretty much just about getting a polished version of that.
A really great sonic change that I think we got, which I'll take credit for because I remember really gunning for this, was the acoustics that come in and are strumming kind of in, I guess what you would call the pre-chorus.
I swear to God, I'd have spared you if I knew.
Yes, that part.
Yeah.
I remember specifically referencing that I wanted it to sound like the first Bon Iver record.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Forever Ago.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this is how he did it, but to me it was like you need to strum with like your thumb and your hand open.
Yeah, I think I did it with like my 4 fingers. Like I think I did a full.
But just kind of a very we're pick boys all the way.
Oh, for sure.
Or finger picking straight up like individual strings. Like
Yeah.
we're not usually like smacking our hand up against the strings, but I was like, that's what this needs.
Yeah.
And I believe I want to say we recorded you doing that section that way and with a pick and finger. I think we did like 3 different like levels of picking or volume or something. And we recorded them all as if they were the final. And then I layered them.
Oh.
And I don't know if I used all of them the whole time or whether like the blend changes, but like we definitely way overdid it for what it is.
I'm interested to hear when we get there. There is one other thing that I remembered that does change.
Yeah.
Is that we added a ton of vocal harmony to that like kind of pre-chorusy sounding section where there's like the really screamy high backing vocals.
Yeah, you scream the harmony at like the top of your voice.
Oh, wow, that was bad. If I knew. Like that really high, which I remember at the time, it was just kind of like, yeah, we want to get the, those harmonies as stacked as we can. And then it ended up being this like really aggressive sounding thing. And we were like, well, that does kind of really convey that emotion. It's just, we're going to have to think about how we mix it. And the way that you pulled it back to where it sits, props to you, because this does exactly the emotion that I wanted to portray with this section, which was that like internally there was just so much chaos and so much noise at that particular moment. And I feel like having that scream be present but not overtake everything is very indicative of that.
Right, because also the lead main vocal, we purposely, when we were recording it, we're trying to get that intimacy or that quiet kind of somberness that the demo one had. So it is like the juxtaposition of like, you're not just like singing it and then screaming it. It's like you're kind of like singing it and then belting it.
Right.
It's like the extremes. There is no middle ground.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
There's some other like synth stuff that got added, I know. Like dum 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 dum, like big bassy synth things that aren't really meant to be heard, more just felt.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. This is maybe the least important track on the record to me sonically, but like it does accomplish a lot in terms of being a transition.
It's definitely my favorite of the interludes.
Interesting.
And oh, for sure. Like it does exactly what it needs to. And for me is a really nice breath of fresh air between Spent and In Stride.
Return of the bubbly, like just birdie sounds.
Oh, yeah.
You called me late last night and your voice took me back in time.
Also, you're singing down the octave as a layer.
Right, which we did up the octave on the other ones.
This was hard to get.
Yeah,
It's very low in your voice.
it is.
We talked for how long, heaven knows.
Right. Also, the whispers are pretty hot here, too.
The dial tone.
Right.
Long time, like it was my lifeline. And I should have let you leave your name and called you back some other day when I was feeling close.
Here comes those.
The strums and the screams here.
With you, I swear to God I'd spared you if I knew that we fall apart and take opposing views. Whoa, it's harder to try.
I remember the whoa. You did not hit.
Absolutely
That
not.
was tuned.
It is
to
very
get that high
I can
note.
sing that high now, but I could not at the time.
It's done, it's done. When it's done, it's done. When it's done, it's done.
Just trying to call you to talk to you another word.
This is also my favorite instance of the acoustic layered with the rhythm guitar, like the way you hear the string attack, like on the strums.
Yo, have you heard the South though? And here's that kind of dissonance. But then we're kind of reset.
And with that, one song remains, but that's a story for another time. You can hear I'll Be Fine by John Lewis in its entirety on all platforms. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
Oh, y'all
Wow.
are the best.
Hey, what? Wait, Jordan. No offense, man. I think they're clapping for like John and I there.
I mean, I was in the episode.
Well, yeah, I know you did like the intro and now you're doing the outro, but like the main meaty episode is like John and I talking, and now they're clapping for that.
Yeah,
'cause
but
that
I mean,
part's
like
over.
maybe I was in there.
I don't understand what you mean. It's just me and John talking.
All I'm trying to say is that no one knows who Mr. Despicable is.
Okay, that is true, but I think you're taking advantage maybe of the fact that Mr. Despicable has a secret identity and implying that you're Mr. Despicable.
Right. So, I mean, if I were to ask you who Mr. Despicable is,
I would not be able to answer that question on air.
exactly. That's my point.
But I feel like that doesn't mean that you can claim you're Mr. Despicable.
But it doesn't mean that I can't not claim that I'm Mr. Despicable.
I honestly can't argue with that logic. So,
In all seriousness, though, that was a really good episode. We did a good job.
oh my gosh.
These episodes have been giving people a really in-depth look at all of the songs. And for me, since I wasn't really involved in any of the recording of the record, it's really cool hearing all of these, like, you know, behind the scenes stories and all of this stuff, because My involvement with the record was not until after all of this stuff was done, and it actually really kind of started when we were starting to put together the album experience together. To anybody listening, I highly recommend getting in on the album experience. It's experience.johnlewismusic.com. It's a really, really cool, in-depth, song by song, behind the scenes, like everything you'd ever want to know, including all of these podcasts, which were done for that experience first and foremost. There's a lot of behind the scenes videos, little Easter eggs. It's just really cool, and it tells you everything you need to know about everything.
It's been really cool seeing people kind of go through that experience on their own. We initially did like a launch and everybody did it at the same time, but as people have found the record, it's just a really cool way to go that next level deeper. And if you've been listening week to week, it's a really great way to just get that last little nugget of like, you know, seeing some of the footage of some of these places we've been describing and how certain things came together and getting like the full dive. And I think there's actually maybe some like merch discount things that happen at the end of the experience. So, you know, go sign up now. Like you said, experience.johnlewismusic.com.
Speaking of merch discounts, make sure you come back next week because we might be giving out some more merch discounts.
Ooh, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
But also come back next week because we are wrapping up the series on I'll Be Fine.
Yep, we got In Stride, which is like the last hurrah of the record. It's kind of the hopeful finale, the epilogue, whatever you want to call it. But we'll be diving into that full on next week. And then I guess we'll see what this show is after that.
I can't wait for it. So make sure you come back next week for a new episode of the Despicable Podcast.
And remember,
George Clooney owns Casamigos.
¿Por qué?
Sí.